KLAF News Time. It is 3:36. AIG received a lot of flack for considering joining a shareholder lawsuit against the government after the company had been bailed out by taxpayers. Joining us now is attorney Trey Branham. He's with Branham Law. Now, Trey, describe this lawsuit and what they were looking at.
So what's going on, recently is that a major shareholder, that's Mr. Greenberg and Starr, have sued AIG in what's called a derivative case. And that's where a shareholder attempts to bring suit in the name of the company against something or someone. And essentially, and I bring those types of cases. I know about those cases, and one of the things that courts require is one of two things: either that you make demand on the corporation to initiate the suit on its own, that is, just what Mr. Starr Corporation and Mr. Greenberg did, which is go to the board of directors and say, please go sue these people.
Right.
Or you have to have what's called demand futility. That's a showing to the court that there's no point in making a demand because they're not going to do what they should do anyway. And so what happens is that in a case like this, the board of directors didn't have any choice but to listen to Mr. Greenberg, because they have an obligation to the shareholders to consider claims like this, even regardless of whether they ultimately decide that they're valid or not.
Right.
If the board of directors decides not to consider that, then there's a very good argument that the board of directors is breaching their fiduciary duty. So they had to consider the claims. In my mind, there was never any question that the board of directors was not going to agree with Mr. Greenberg and initiate suit. I can't remember it happening, candidly, in any of these cases. And that's just not what boards of directors do, but they do have to consider it, and that's what's going on.
So basically, they were doing their due diligence just to go through and talking to attorney Trey Branham. Yeah, it's one of those PR nightmares that you just couldn't fathom. Then going, wait a minute, this seems like a good idea.
Yeah, in fact, I think that what would have been very interesting is if for some reason the board had considered doing and actually signed on to the case. The much better derivative lawsuit would be from shareholders suing the board for agreeing to it, because the damage to the company from a PR perspective would have been enormous.
Does he have a case?
Well, I honestly haven't gone and spent a bunch of time with the pleadings. I'm not going to, the issue really, I suspect, is whether or not the board of directors at the time they were negotiating the bailout negotiated the best deal they could. Mm-hmm. And I don't know the answer to that, but
Gotcha.
my sense of it is that, in a dire situation where either the company is going out of business or it's going to get saved, you take what's offered.
Makes sense. So are we going to see maybe a couple more of these, maybe not on this level, but come up over the next several years?
I'd be surprised. Derivative cases go on every day.
Sure.
But I'd be surprised if there's a whole lot more of these. I think although I'll tell you, Mr. Greenberg's lawyers, they're some of the best in the country. And it doesn't strike me that they would have taken on this without giving it some thought. In a case like this, where the decision was either the company stays solvent or it goes out of business, it's hard to imagine a whole lot of people wanting to bring that case.
Talking to attorney Trey Branham, how is AIG now?
Well, I saw numbers the other day that 10, 15 billion in profits over the last couple of years, each year.
That's not bad.
Well, they're an insurance company.
Sure,
right. And everybody needs insurance, and they're certainly the largest. And insurance companies are in the business of making money, not necessarily in the business of paying premiums or paying out claims.
Yeah, when you read about something like this, the first response is, well, how can they do that? But it's a PR nightmare. You have to go through like you said, the due diligence of the process, but at the same time, it certainly doesn't look good for you to even consider it or give the illusion that you've considered it. But you're not doing your shareholders the right thing by not at least exploring all your options.
It's a rock and a hard place for the board there, but they didn't have any choice. And that was, one of the things that was getting reported was that the board was considering this. In the tone of the reporting is that they're actively wanting to do this. And I really don't think that was the case. They were doing something they were obligated to do for shareholder benefits and candidly to avoid, further lawsuits.
Trey, I appreciate you spending a few minutes with us. Thanks so much.
You bet. Call anytime.
Still ahead on 570 KLAF Traffic and Weathers. Next, an update from the Wall Street Journal that comes your way at 3:50 and the latest in sports at 3:53. KLAF News and Information Time. Thanks for joining us.